The pregnancy test was positive, and it wasn't his ex-wife's. It belonged to the powerful CEO currently wearing nothing but his faded college t-shirt in his kitchen. Mark Stevens, 39, single father of 2, stared at Eliza Harrington as she held up the white plastic stick with trembling hands, her usual boardroom confidence replaced by vulnerable uncertainty. "I know we've only been dating for 6 months, she whispered, "but I'm keeping it, with or without you." Mark's mind raced through a hurricane of emotions: fear, shock, unexpected joy. Everything he'd rebuilt after his divorce could collapse: the careful routine with his kids, the financial stability he'd finally achieved, the protective walls he'd constructed around his heart. His daughters, Emma and Lily, had just started accepting Eliza in their lives. Now, at 39, he faced becoming a new father again, potentially losing his daughter's trust, and possibly watching another woman walk away if he couldn't step up. The question burned in his mind: could he risk everything again for a woman whose world existed in gleaming skyscrapers while his was built around school lunches and bedtime stories? "Say something, please," Eliza said, her normally commanding voice now small. The morning sunlight caught the silver in her dark hair, illuminating the worry lines that her executive team never got to see. Mark opened his mouth, but his phone rang, his ex-wife's name flashing on the screen. "I need to take this," he said, watching Eliza's face fall as he stepped away. "Claire, what's wrong?" "It's Emma," his ex-wife said, panic evident in her voice. "There's been an accident at school. We're at Memorial Hospital. She's asking for you." The phone slipped from Mark's hand, clattering to the floor. Eliza was instantly at his side, her pregnancy revelation momentarily forgotten as she saw the color drain from his face. The hospital corridors seemed endless as Mark ran, Eliza keeping pace beside him despite having rushed out wearing only his shirt with her suit pants. They found 12-year-old Emma with a broken arm and minor concussion from a fall during gym class. As Mark held his daughter's hand, he caught Eliza discreetly wiping away tears. This CEO who managed billion-dollar deals was crying over a child she had no obligation to. When Emma fell asleep, Eliza whispered, "I should go. This is family time." Mark caught her wrist. "You are family," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Or at least, you could be." The words hung between them, neither ready to fully address what they meant while sitting in a hospital room, but something had shifted. Mark realized that in his moment of crisis, he hadn't pushed her away, he'd wanted her there. Their relationship had begun innocently enough, at a charity gala Mark had attended only because his design firm had donated services. He'd been standing alone, feeling out of place among the city's elite, when Eliza approached him. Not recognizing the CEO of Harrington Innovations, he'd spoken to her with a refreshing directness that caught her off guard. By the end of the evening, she'd asked for his number, ostensibly to discuss redesigning her company's creative materials. 3 coffee meetings later, they both knew it wasn't about business anymore. Their first real date had been a disaster: a reservation mix-up, a spilled glass of wine on her designer dress, and a torrential downpour that left them soaked as they ran for shelter. Mark had been certain she'd never call again. Instead, she'd shown up at his door the next evening with takeout and a bottle of wine, saying, "I think we deserve a do-over." When his daughters unexpectedly came home early from their mothers, Eliza had seamlessly shifted from romantic date to impromptu pizza party, helping Lily with her science project while discussing music with Emma. That night, after the girls were asleep, Mark realized he was in trouble. He was falling for a woman who lived in a different world. The following weeks brought a delicate dance of revelation and adjustment. Mark told his daughters about the baby over their favorite pizza dinner, bracing for rejection. Instead, 9-year-old Lily asked if she could be the baby's official big sister, while Emma, ever practical, began researching how to be a good sibling to a much younger child. The relief nearly brought Mark to his knees. But as Eliza's pregnancy progressed, the fundamental differences in their lives became impossible to ignore. Her board was pressuring her about maternity leave plans, questioning her commitment to the company she'd built from the ground up. Mark's modest three-bedroom house couldn't compare to her downtown penthouse. Their worlds were colliding, and neither knew how to navigate the impact. "I've been offered the London position," Eliza announced one evening as they sat on Mark's porch swing. 4 months pregnant now, she rested her hand on her visible bump. "It's everything I've worked for: international expansion, double the salary, equity options that could set our child up for life." She paused, tears forming. "But it means moving. All of us. Or just me?" Mark felt the ground shift beneath him. Move his daughters away from their mother and friends? Uproot their stable lives? Or watch Eliza and his unborn child leave? "I can't ask you to give up your dream," he said finally, the words tasting bitter. "And I can't take the girls from Claire. So this is it?" Eliza's voice broke. "We just end?" She stood up, her silhouette outlined by the setting sun, one hand protectively over her stomach. "I have to give them my answer tomorrow." She walked inside, leaving Mark alone with an impossible choice as night fell around him. The weight of the decision crushed against his chest as he remembered how he'd first learned about Eliza's reputation. After their third date, he'd finally Googled her, nearly choking on his coffee when he discovered she was listed among the country's top 50 most influential business leaders. Articles described her as ruthlessly efficient, married to her work, and the ice queen of tech innovation. The woman he knew laughed at bad jokes, had a weakness for chocolate chip cookies, and had once spent an entire Saturday helping him build a treehouse for the girls, designer clothes replaced by jeans and a borrowed flannel shirt. That night, unable to sleep, Mark found himself sorting through old photographs: his wedding to Claire, Emma's birth, Lily's first steps, the painful images of moving out during the divorce. Life had taught him that nothing was permanent, that happiness came with expiration dates. As dawn broke, he heard soft footsteps and looked up to find Emma in the doorway. "Dad? Are you letting Eliza go?" she asked, her young face serious in the early light. "It's complicated, Em," he sighed. "No, it's not," she said with the clarity only children possess. "You're scared. Mom told me you were scared when I was born too, but you figured it out." She sat beside him. "Eliza makes you smile again. We notice." Mark stared at his daughter, seeing for the first time not just a child he needed to protect, but a person with wisdom of her own. Before he could respond, his phone chimed with a text from Eliza: "Meeting at 9. Need to give my answer. I love you, whatever happens." The digital clock read 7:30 a.m. Mark had 90 minutes to decide the rest of their lives. He thought back to 6 weeks earlier, when he'd first met Eliza's parents at their Hamptons estate. Her father, a retired judge, had taken Mark aside after dinner. "She's never brought anyone home before," he'd said quietly. "Not in 20 years of adult relationships." The older man had studied Mark carefully. "She's always chosen her career over connection. Until you." That same night, Eliza had confessed that before meeting Mark, she'd decided to have a child on her own through a donor, believing she'd never find someone who would accept both her ambition and her desire for family. Mark remembered, too, the night Eliza had first stayed over when the girls were home. He'd woken at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty, only to discover her sitting in Lily's room, reading quietly to his daughter who'd had a nightmare. "My mom used to do this for me," she'd explained later. "I never thought I'd get the chance to pass it on. What happened next would change everything." Mark called Claire, having the most honest conversation they'd had since their divorce. Then he woke Lily, gathered Emma, and made the most important drive of his life. They arrived at Eliza's company headquarters at 8:55 a.m., the girls clutching handmade signs they'd insisted on creating during the drive. Security tried to stop them, but Mark was beyond being deterred. They burst into the boardroom just as Eliza was shaking hands with the London executives. The room fell silent as the prestigious CEO's personal life literally crashed her professional one, a disheveled single dad and two young girls holding colorful posters reading, "Our family belongs together," and, "London, New York, or Mars, we're coming too." "We're not letting you choose," Mark announced, his heart pounding. "We're choosing you. All of us." He stepped forward, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket that contained not a ring, but a key. "This is to our new home. It's halfway between your office and the girls' school. Claire has agreed to joint custody arrangements if we stay within 50 miles. He took a shaky breath. "Take the London job if it's your dream. We'll make it work with video calls and summers together. Or stay and build something with us. But whatever you decide, know that we're not walking away." Eliza stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as the board members awkwardly averted their eyes from this raw display of emotion. For a woman who had sacrificed personal connections for professional success her entire life, the sight of a ready-made family fighting for her was overwhelming. She looked from Mark to the girls, then to her colleagues, and finally to the contract before her. "Gentlemen," she said, her CEO voice returning though her cheeks remained wet, "I need to propose an alternative arrangement." She pulled Mark and the girls close. "One that keeps me in New York, with quarterly London trips." She looked directly at Mark. "Because some investments yield returns that can't be measured in dollars." The boardroom erupted in confused murmurs. The London team looked stunned, while Eliza's New York executives exchanged knowing glances. One older board member, who had mentored Eliza since her early career, stood up with a smile. "I believe we can accommodate that arrangement, Ms. Harrington. Perhaps we should reconvene after lunch to discuss details." He gave Mark a subtle nod of approval as the room cleared, leaving the newly affirmed family alone in the corporate sanctuary. "You came for me," Eliza whispered once they were alone, her hand trembling as she touched Mark's face. "No one has ever chosen me over business opportunities before." "We're not asking you to choose," Emma said, her 12-year-old wisdom shining through. "We're asking you to let us be part of your choice." That moment in the boardroom became family legend, retold at holidays and anniversaries with increasing embellishment. What the story often left out were the difficult months that followed. The painful negotiations with Claire about custody schedules, the nights Eliza came home exhausted from balancing pregnancy and executive responsibilities, the times Mark questioned whether his freelance design career was enough alongside Eliza's corporate success. Their house hunting had been an education in compromise. Eliza's real estate agent had shown them sleek penthouses with doormen and amenities, while Mark had pushed for suburban homes with yards and good school districts. They'd finally found a brownstone in need of renovation, a project that became a metaphor for their relationship as they tore down walls, updated outdated systems, and created something that honored the structure's history while building for its future. The first time they hosted both sets of parents for dinner in their half-renovated home had been a study in contrasts. Eliza's parents arrived with expensive wine and stories of their recent trip to Tuscany, while Mark's brought homemade lasagna and photos of Lily's recent soccer tournament. By dessert, however, the mothers were exchanging recipes while the fathers discovered a shared passion for vintage jazz records. Watching them, Mark and Eliza exchanged a look of surprised relief. Perhaps their worlds weren't as incompatible as they'd feared. Their first major fight came when Eliza's assistant scheduled an important investor meeting on the same day as Emma's school play. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Mark had said, the old insecurities rushing back. "Your work will always come first." The hurt in Eliza's eyes had been immediate. "That's not fair," she'd responded, her voice tight. "I'm trying to build security for all of us, including this baby. I can't just walk away from responsibilities because I'm pregnant." They'd gone to bed angry, backs turned to each other, the silence deafening. In the morning, Mark had found Eliza already dressed for work, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep, perhaps both. "I rescheduled the meeting," she'd said quietly. "And I set a new policy with my assistant. Family events go on my calendar first, not last." She'd paused, vulnerability evident in her posture. "But I need you to understand that my career isn't just ambition. It's part of who I am. If you want me to be less than who I am." "I don't," Mark had interrupted, crossing the room to hold her. "I fell in love with all of you, the CEO and the woman who reads to Lily when she has nightmares. I'm sorry." The pregnancy had progressed with its own challenges. At 6 months, Eliza had been put on modified bed rest due to high blood pressure, forcing her to work from home and delegate more responsibilities than she'd ever been comfortable with. Mark had found her one evening, surrounded by spreadsheets in their bed, silently crying. "What if I can't do this?" she'd asked when he sat beside her. "What if I'm terrible at being a mother? What if I resent giving up parts of my career? What if you're amazing at it, just like you are at everything else?" he'd countered, placing his hand on her rounded belly. "What if this is the best decision we've ever made? What if our child gets your brilliance and my charm?" That had earned him a watery laugh and a pillow thrown at his head. The nursery became their shared project during those weeks of bed rest. Mark would bring paint samples and fabric swatches to their bedroom for Eliza's approval, while Emma and Lily contributed artwork for the walls. They'd decided not to learn the baby's sex, decorating in shades of green and yellow that reminded Eliza of the Vermont countryside where she'd spent summers as a child. One night, as Mark painted clouds on the nursery ceiling, Eliza had waddled in despite her restrictions. "I need to tell you something," she'd said, her expression serious. "I've been offered the CEO position at our biggest competitor. Triple my current salary, full creative control, and a family-friendly work environment." Mark had nearly fallen off the ladder. "Are you considering it?" "I already declined," she'd said, surprising him. "I built Harrington Innovations from nothing. Its values are my values. I don't want to abandon it. I want to transform it into a company that values family as much as profit." She'd smiled then. "Besides, I've already scheduled a meeting with HR to overhaul our parental leave policies. If they want to keep me, they'll need to become the kind of company where parents can thrive." 6 months later, Mark woke up to find Eliza wearing his shirt again, now stretched over her 8-month pregnant belly as she attempted to make pancakes with Emma and Lily. Their new house was still half unpacked, wedding planning binders competed for space with baby catalogs, and Mark's freelance design work had expanded to include projects for Eliza's company. Nothing was perfect, Eliza still worked too much, Mark still worried about the future, and blending families remained a daily challenge. The wedding had been small but meaningful, held in the garden of their new home just as the renovation was completed. Eliza, 7 months pregnant and radiant, had walked down the aisle on her father's arm while Emma and Lily waited beside Mark, all three of them teary-eyed. Claire had attended with her new partner, their peaceful co-parenting a gift to the children they shared. The moment that had touched Mark most deeply was when Eliza had included special vows to Emma and Lily, promising to respect their bond with their mother while creating her own unique relationship with each of them. The baby's imminent arrival had brought new anxieties and preparations. Mark had assembled the crib 3 times before getting it right, while Eliza had approached childbirth with the same methodical research she applied to business acquisitions. Her hospital bag had been packed since week 30, complete with a color-coded checklist and backup plans for every scenario. Yet for all her planning, she'd confessed to Mark one night that she was terrified. "I've never failed at anything that mattered," she'd whispered in the darkness. "But this, being a mother, being a wife, balancing everything, what if I can't do it?" Mark had pulled her close, his hand resting on the baby who kicked actively beneath his palm. "The secret is that none of us know what we're doing," he'd admitted. "We're all just figuring it out day by day. But we'll figure it out together." The morning Eliza went into labor came 3 weeks earlier than expected. Mark had been in the middle of a client presentation when his phone lit up with Emma's name. She'd been home with Eliza while Lily was at a friend's house. "Dad," Emma's voice was remarkably calm, "Eliza says it's time." Her water broke while she was on a conference call. The drive to the hospital was a blur of phone calls, to Claire to pick up Lily, to Eliza's assistant to reschedule meetings, to both sets of grandparents. Through it all, Eliza remained composed, timing her contractions with the same precision she applied to quarterly reports, though her grip on Mark's hand revealed her fear. "I'm not ready," she admitted as they wheeled her into the delivery room. "The nursery isn't finished, I haven't completed the third-quarter projections, and we haven't even decided on a name." Mark kissed her forehead. "The baby doesn't care about projections. And names can wait." 14 hours later, their son was born, 7 pounds, 3 ounces of screaming, perfect life. When the nurse placed him in Eliza's arms, the transformation on her face was immediate and profound. The woman who commanded boardrooms with unwavering authority looked down at the tiny bundle with an expression of wonder and terror. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered, using the name they'd finally agreed upon in hour 10 of labor, honoring Mark's late grandfather. "I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise to figure it out." The first months were a chaotic blend of midnight feedings, diaper changes, and Eliza's determination to maintain some connection to her company through video calls often conducted with Thomas asleep on her chest. Mark watched in awe as she navigated motherhood with the same intensity she brought to everything else, researching infant development with scholarly dedication while somehow finding time to help Emma with her science fair project and attend Lily's recitals. Their new normal wasn't without challenges. Eliza struggled with the physical limitations of recovery and the emotional adjustment to sharing her body and time. Mark grappled with financial insecurities as Eliza's maternity leave reduced their income. The girls alternated between excitement over their baby brother and jealousy of the attention he required. But watching them together in the kitchen, flour-covered and laughing, Mark realized that life's most meaningful journeys don't follow straight lines. Sometimes they require leaps of faith, compromises, and the courage to redefine what family means. As Eliza caught him watching and blew him a kiss, he knew that the greatest risk would have been not taking one at all. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Eliza asked, passing Thomas to him as she wiped pancake batter from her hands. "Just that I never expected any of this," Mark answered honestly, cradling his son. "A year ago, I was convinced my life was set in stone. Single dad, modest career, careful routines. Then you showed up in my kitchen wearing my shirt." Eliza smiled, the confident CEO and vulnerable new mother perfectly balanced in her expression. "And what I said left you frozen." "Because you changed everything," he replied, as Emma and Lily crowded around to make faces at their baby brother. "You showed me that sometimes the best families aren't the ones we're born into or even the ones we plan, they're the ones we build together, one impossible choice at a time." Thomas gurgled happily, grabbing his father's finger with surprising strength. In that moment, Mark understood that their story wasn't about perfect solutions or fairy tale endings. It was about choosing each other every day, through board meetings and school plays, through 3 a.m. feedings and teenage rebellions yet to come. It was about creating a family that honored where they'd been while building something entirely new. If this story of unexpected love and family touched your heart, remember that second chances often arrive in packages we never anticipated. Life's most beautiful chapters can begin with moments that leave us frozen, forcing us to choose between fear and possibility. Share this with someone who might need courage today, and follow for more stories that remind us why the most complicated journeys are often the most worthwhile.
A homeless girl sleeps wrapped in cardboard on a sidewalk. When the young billionaire wakes her up, she says, "It's not a bed, but at least it keeps the cold away." And what he sees beside her makes him drop to his knees. Jackson Cole wasn't used to being out so late. The clock read 11:23 p.m., and the temperature had plunged along with the sun. Winter in New York had always been ruthless, a silent war against anyone with nowhere to go. On his way home from the office, stepping over frozen puddles beneath the flickering streetlights, Jackson clutched his gray wool coat tighter against his chest. He could have hailed a taxi or called his driver as he usually did. But tonight, something had pushed him onto the streets, into the noise of the city that never sleeps, maybe to escape the silence of his penthouse apartment. That's when he saw it. At first, it just looked like a pile of discarded cardboard by a closed shop. But then he noticed a small pink shoe, worn and faded, sticking out from what was actually an improvised shelter. Jackson slowed his steps. He stopped, looked around, searching for an adult, some logical explanation for what his eyes were witnessing. He found nothing but the bitter wind and the distant sound of honking horns. He approached slowly, the way one might approach a wild animal without wanting to scare it. "Hello?" he called, leaning down. "Is anyone there?" No answer came immediately. Jackson was about to give up, thinking maybe it really was just trash after all, when a subtle movement made the cardboard boxes tremble. And then, through a small opening, two eyes appeared, huge, brown, frightened. A child's eyes. "Hey," Jackson said, crouching on one knee. "Are you okay?" The eyes blinked, and slowly, like a small creature emerging from its burrow, a little girl's face appeared. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. Dark, messy hair framed a dirty face with delicate features, like a forgotten porcelain doll. Jackson felt something strange in his chest. He wasn't the type to be easily moved. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country, Jackson Cole had seen it all, negotiating with the most ruthless sharks in the market. He'd built an empire before turning 30, and now at 32, he found himself utterly speechless before a homeless child. "You shouldn't be here," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where are your parents?" The girl didn't answer. She just kept watching him with those wide eyes as though deciding whether he was a threat. "It's freezing out here," Jackson went on. "Do you need help? I can call someone." Then, slowly, she emerged a bit more from her hiding place. She was wearing a coat far too thin for the season, and her tiny hands clutched something to her chest, an object Jackson couldn't immediately identify. When she spoke, her voice was almost a whisper, but clear as the ring of a bell. "It's not a bed, but at least it keeps the cold away." The statement, said with the raw innocence only children possess, hit Jackson like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it, without self-pity, simply stating a fact as if sleeping wrapped in cardboard in an alley were normal for a 4-year-old girl. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice as calm as possible to hide how shocked he felt. "Lily," she replied, looking him directly in the eyes this time. "Lily," Jackson repeated. "I'm Jackson. What are you doing out here all alone? Where's your mom?" Instead of answering, Lily shifted, causing the cardboard to tear slightly. That's when the object she was clutching to her chest became visible. A photograph, small, a bit creased at the edges, protected by a plastic sleeve worn with time. Jackson reached out slowly. "May I see that?" For a moment, Lily hesitated. Her small arm drew back, as if protecting her most precious treasure. But then, something in Jackson's eyes made her change her mind. She held the photo out to him. Jackson took it carefully, and when he turned it over, felt his knees buckle. The shock was so great that he actually stumbled, landing on one knee on the cold ground. In the photo, a young woman was smiling at the camera, a smile he knew as well as he knew his own reflection in the mirror, even after 5 years without seeing it. Claire, his sister, who had vanished without a trace. "Where did you get this?" Jackson's voice came out faint, almost inaudible. Lily tilted her head to the side, confused by his reaction. "She's my mama," she said simply. The world seemed to spin around Jackson. It was impossible. Claire had disappeared 5 years ago, after a terrible fight between them. He'd hired detectives, offered rewards, searched every corner of the country. And now, a homeless child on a New York sidewalk had a recent photo of her. "Your mama," he repeated, unable to process the information. "She was sick," Lily said, shrugging. "She told me to wait, but she never came back." Jackson looked at the photo again. There was no doubt. It was Claire, and the photo seemed recent. His sister was alive, and apparently she had a daughter, a niece. He had a niece. "Lily," Jackson said, struggling to keep his composure. "How long have you been here?" "Many days," she answered. First I stayed with the lady who had yellow hair, but she took me to a big place with lots of kids. I didn't like it there, so I left to look for Mama. A shelter. She must have run away from a children's shelter. Not even the icy wind could cool Jackson's mind, which was reeling with questions. Where was Claire now? Why was her daughter alone on the streets? What had happened? Are you hungry? He asked, knowing he had to do something concrete while trying to make sense of the situation. Lily nodded timidly. Do you want to come with me? We can get something warm to eat. A burger, maybe? The girl's eyes lit up, but she quickly hid her excitement. Jackson recognized that look, the same one he saw in the mirror every day, distrust, caution. You don't have to be afraid, he added. I just want to help. After a moment of hesitation, Lily reached out her little hand to take back the photo. Jackson returned it, noticing how she immediately pressed it to her chest as if it were a talisman. Do burgers come with fries? She asked, her voice a bit stronger now. Jackson couldn't help smiling. Yes, fries. Lots of fries. Slowly, she emerged completely from her cardboard shelter. She was even smaller than Jackson had imagined, thin, wearing clothes too large for her. But there was something determined in the way she stood, something brave that didn't match someone so tiny. Do you know my mama? She asked, surprising Jackson with her insight. He took a deep breath. Yes, Lily, I do. They walked in silence to a diner still open on the corner. It wasn't a fancy place, just one of those little spots that stay lit all night. A refuge for taxi drivers, night workers, and occasionally people with nowhere else to go. The waitress looked curiously at the man in the expensive suit accompanied by a dirty, disheveled child, but asked no questions. New York was a city full of strange stories. They sat at a table in the corner. Jackson ordered a full burger, fries, and a chocolate milkshake for Lily. For himself, just a coffee. While they waited, he tried to organize his thoughts. Claire missing for 5 years, a niece he never knew existed, and the girl alone on the streets. Nothing made sense. When the food arrived, Lily stared at the plate like it was a treasure, but she didn't dive in as Jackson had expected. Instead, she picked up a fry carefully, almost reverently, and took a small bite. Jackson watched, fascinated. Her movements were small, measured. She ate like someone who had learned to make food last. Between fries, she sipped her milkshake, as if wanting to make it last as long as possible. You can eat as much as you want, Jackson said. If you want more, I'll order it. She looked at him, wary, but then picked up the burger with both hands. She ate slowly, chewing each bite thoroughly before swallowing. The silence was broken only by the diner sounds, clattering dishes, distant conversations, the radio playing an old tune. Jackson waited patiently. He knew it wouldn't help to pressure her. It was after she had finished half the burger that Lily began to speak. Mama got really sick, she said, staring at her plate. She coughed a lot, stayed in bed. Jackson nodded, encouraging her to continue. One day she said she was going to get medicine, told me to be a good girl and wait. She never came back. Her voice was so simple and direct that it made the story even more devastating. Where did you... And your mom live, Lily? In a tiny room with a cranky old lady. When Mama didn't come back, the lady took me to a big place. There were other kids and rules. She wrinkled her nose when she said rules. The shelter, Jackson murmured. I ran away, she continued, picking up another fry. I wanted to find Mama. She told me to keep the photo safe. It's important. And you've kept it very safe, Jackson said, trying to smile. Lily nodded, solemn. I learned to sleep in small places. Some nice people give food sometimes, mean people yell, but if you stay really quiet, they don't see you. Jackson felt a lump in his throat. A 4-year-old shouldn't know how to hide to survive on air. The streets. How long ago did your mother leave? Lily shrugged. Lots of days. First there were leaves on the trees, then they fell off. Now there's ice. Months, then. She'd been alone or in shelters since at least the fall. You know your mom's full name? Claire, she said, and Jackson felt his heart skip a beat. Claire Cole. So Claire was still using the family name. Another detail that didn't make sense, considering how they had parted. Lily, Jackson said, leaning forward, do you know what happened to your mom? Why she hasn't come back? The girl looked down as if the answer were hidden among the fries. "I think she got lost," she finally said. "Or maybe the bad men took her." "Bad men?" "The ones she was scared of. Mama always looked behind us when we walked on the street. She said we had to be careful." A chill ran through Jackson that had nothing to do with the weather. Claire was afraid of someone. In danger. Lily finished her burger and glanced shyly at the empty plate. "Do you want more?" Jackson asked. She shook her head. "I'm good." Jackson studied the small, weary face in front of him, a child who had already been through more hardship than many adults. His niece, his own flesh and blood. The decision came instantly, without hesitation. "Lily," he said, "you're coming with me. Right now we're going home." Her eyes widened. "Your home?" "Yes, my home. It's big, with a warm bed and food, and we're going to find your mom, I promise. You'll help me find Mama." The hope in her voice was almost painful. "To hear, I will," Jackson promised. "I'll do everything I can." Lily studied him for a moment. Then, with the wisdom of someone far older, she asked, "Why?" The question caught him off guard. How could he explain to a 4-year-old about family ties, years of regret, and the chance for redemption she was unknowingly offering him? "Because," Jackson said, "the lady in your photo, Claire, she's my sister. I'm your uncle." "Lily." She blinked, processing the information. "Uncle," she repeated, testing the word. "Like in storybooks?" "Exactly like in storybooks," he confirmed. Lily picked up the last fry, took a thoughtful bite, and then asked the question Jackson had been dreading. "If you're Mama's brother, how come she never told me about you?" Jackson sighed. How to explain years of estrangement, harsh words exchanged, pride and stubbornness that kept a brother and sister apart for so long? "Sometimes," he answered carefully, "people who love each other very much have a fight and stop talking. That's what happened with your mom and me. But that doesn't mean we don't still love each other." Lily seemed to consider this for a moment. Then, to Jackson's surprise, she reached out her little hand and touched his. "You look sad," she said. "Mama was sad sometimes too. She used to stare into the distance and cry when she thought I was asleep." The simple, direct comment struck Jackson like an arrow to the heart. The image of Claire crying alone, with a young daughter, hiding from something or someone, made him feel ill. "We'll find her, Lily," he promised, gently squeezing her dirty little hand. "But first we need to take care of you." He paid the bill, leaving a generous tip, and they stepped out into the cold night. Jackson took off his coat and placed it over Lily's small shoulders. Even folded several times, it was still huge. "On her?" "Is it far?" she asked, trying not to yawn. "No, it's not," he answered, noticing her exhaustion. "Want me to carry you?" She hesitated, pride warring with fatigue. Finally, she held out her arms in surrender. Jackson picked her up, surprised at how light she was. Lily rested her head on his shoulder, clinging to him like a tiny koala, Claire's photo clutched tightly in her hand. As he walked toward his apartment, carrying his newest treasure, Jackson Cole knew his life had just changed forever. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something he'd forgotten. Hope. The mystery of Claire would have to wait until morning. For now, all that mattered was the sleeping child in his arms and the silent promise he made to himself. From this day on, Lily would be safe, and he would do anything to keep that promise. 3 weeks had passed since Jackson brought Lily home. The first night had been strange for both of them. He didn't know how to care for a child. She was wary of that oversized, too quiet apartment. The first week was organized chaos. Jackson hired a team to transform the guest room into a space suitable for a 4-year-old girl. The grey walls became a soft shade of aqua. New furniture, a bed with safety rails, low bookshelves. Toys he had no idea how to pick out, which he bought under the eager guidance of smiling sales clerks. "How long has she been with you?" one of the store consultants asked, as he paid for an absurd number of stuffed animals. "Not long," was all Jackson replied. He didn't officially register Lily's presence. Not yet. First, he needed to find out what happened to Claire, understand why his sister had vanished with a small child, why the girl ended up on the streets. He had only told his executive assistant, Vanessa, that he was temporarily responsible for a niece. She raised her perfectly shaped eyebrows, but asked no questions beyond the necessary. She simply rearranged his schedule and hired a child development specialist to guide him. The first days were tough. Lily woke up screaming in the middle of the night, terrible dreams she couldn't or wouldn't explain. On the first few nights, Jackson tried just words of comfort from the doorway. On the third night, when the cries seemed endless, he finally went in, sat on the edge of her bed, and awkwardly placed his hand on her hair. "It's okay, Lily. You're safe." It was enough. Her breathing calmed, her eyes closed again. He stayed there until he was sure she had fallen back asleep. Now, 23 days later, something like a routine was forming between them. A careful dance, like partners still learning each other's steps. At first, Jackson held his meetings by video call from his home office. He kept an ear out for noises in the apartment, worried about what Lily might be up to, even with the nanny. He had hired to supervise her, but he soon realized Lily was surprisingly independent. Not that she didn't need supervision. She was still just 4 years old. But there was a self-sufficiency about her that was unusual for her age. Jackson recognized it as the result of everything she'd gone through in her short life. One morning, after ending a video call, he stepped out of his office and found Lily sitting in the middle of the living room, surrounded by sheets of paper. She was drawing intently, her tongue poking out at the corner of her mouth, her small fingers gripping a crayon. "What are you drawing?" he asked, kneeling down to see. Lily held up the paper proudly. It was a drawing of 2 stick figures, a little one, obviously herself, and a bigger one wearing what looked like a suit. "That's me and you, Jack." It was the first time she shortened his name. Jackson felt something warm blossom in his chest, a sensation he couldn't name. "Jack," he repeated, and didn't correct her. After that, it became routine. Every morning, after his early calls, he found time to sit on the living room floor and draw with her. At first, just random scribbles, but soon he found himself making houses, trees, people, and animals to entertain his little companion. "You draw really well," she said one day, admiring the elephant he'd sketched. Jackson laughed. "Actually, I was awful in art class. At school." Lily frowned, confused. "What's art class?" And so, without realizing it, he began telling her about his childhood. Small stories, fragments of memory he didn't even know he still had. The Saturday art classes their parents made him attend, the teacher with a thick mustache who always smelled of paint. How Claire, 3 years younger, created the most beautiful paintings while he struggled to draw straight lines. He never mentioned Claire was Lily's mother. The girl never asked and he didn't bring it up. It was as though they shared an unspoken agreement. Gradually, between drawings and casual conversation, the mornings became something Jackson looked forward to. The evenings developed their own routine too. Jackson noticed he was getting home earlier now, not out of obligation but because he wanted to. Before, the penthouse was just a place to sleep. Now it felt lighter, though he couldn't explain why. He started bringing small gifts for Lily. Not expensive things, he soon learned. Extravagance made her uncomfortable. A book with colorful illustrations, a puzzle, a box of better quality crayons than the previous ones. The puzzle became another ritual. After dinner, they spread the pieces on the coffee table and worked on it together. At first, these were simple 20 or 30-piece puzzles, but Jackson noticed Lily quickly figured out the patterns, so he started bringing more complex ones. She proved to be exceptionally good at it. "How do you do it so fast?" he asked one evening, after she found 3 matching pieces in a row. Lily shrugged. "I just look for the colors that match." But it was more than that. It was an aptitude for patterns, for seeing what others didn't see. Jackson made a mental note to look for schools that nurtured that kind of intelligence when the time came. When the time comes. As though he was already imagining her staying. As though he saw her as a permanent part of his life. One rainy Saturday, after they spent the morning working on a 500-piece puzzle, he found her gazing sadly out the window. "Want to do something different today?" Lily turned around, hopeful. "Can we watch cartoons?" Jackson realized that despite buying plenty of toys, he had never actually turned on the TV for her. Not because he had strict rules, he'd simply never thought about it. "Sure," he said, picking up the remote. "What kind of cartoons do you like?" She shrugged. "I don't know. In the shelter there was only one, about a bunny." Jackson flipped through kids' channels, but nothing seemed to grab her. Then he had an idea. Wait here. He went to his office and opened a box he hadn't touched in years. Inside were old DVDs from his own childhood, which he'd kept for sentimental reasons he'd never admit. He returned with a dusty case and showed Lily. "This was my favorite cartoon when I was your age." Her eyes lit up as it started. It was old with simpler animation by modern standards, but it had a charm that transcended time. A story about a family of bears who explored magical forests. "The little bear looks like you," Lily said suddenly, pointing at the screen. Jackson laughed. "Why do you think that?" He looks serious, but he's not bad. He just doesn't know how to smile properly. The observation, so straightforward, caught him off guard. Was that how she saw him? Someone who didn't know how to smile. That afternoon, they watched 3 episodes in a row. Jackson was surprised to find he remembered every detail, even lines of dialogue. Lily snuggled up beside him on the couch, laughing at the right moments, asking questions he sometimes couldn't answer. Why doesn't the big bear have any friends? Why does the fox always lie? Will the bears find the magic mountain? Jackson answered as best he could, realizing he was unconsciously repeating explanations his own mother had once given him and Claire decades ago. After that day, the biggest change happened. That was when Jackson realized he wasn't just housing Lily, he was building a new life with her. One night he came home late from a meeting. He had told Lily he'd be home after her bedtime and asked the nanny to stay until he arrived. But when he walked in, he found the nanny asleep in an armchair and Lily sprawled on the couch, a storybook open on her chest. He quietly dismissed the nanny and stood there, watching Lily as she slept. She looked so small, so vulnerable. The thought that had haunted him for weeks returned. What if he hadn't found her that night? How much longer would she have survived on the streets? He picked up a light blanket and gently covered her. He was about to leave when he heard a sleepy voice. "I like living here with you, Jack." He froze, not sure how to respond. When he turned around, he saw her eyes were closed again. She'd been talking in her sleep, or nearly so, driven by an impulse he couldn't explain. Jackson sat on the floor beside the couch. He stayed there watching Lily's peaceful face, feeling something he had never felt before. It was in that moment, seeing her chest rise and fall in gentle breaths, that he understood the truth. The entire empire he had built, all the money he had accumulated, meant nothing compared to this. This child, who had come into his life under impossible circumstances, was worth more than any fortune. The following Sunday, he decided they needed an outing. The weather was good, a rare sunny day after a week of rain. The park seemed like the obvious choice. "I've never been to a park before," Lily said as he helped tie her shoes. Jackson felt that familiar twinge. Every new discovery about Lily's limited childhood pained him in a new way. "Then you're going to love it," he promised. "There are swings, slides, and a pond with ducks." He dressed in casual clothes, jeans, and a simple t-shirt, something he rarely wore. They walked there, her small hand firmly in his. Lily was wide-eyed, pointing at dogs, balloon vendors, a street band. The park was full of families enjoying the good weather. Jackson felt a flicker of discomfort. Did they look like a real uncle and niece? Or would people see only a man alone, with a small child, and ask questions? But his worries vanished when Lily spotted the swings. She squeezed his hand and pointed, unable to contain her excitement. "Can we go there?" Jackson realized with surprise that he had never seen her this animated. The Lily he knew was reserved, almost too serious for her age. Seeing her act like any other kid warmed his heart. "Of course we can." He helped her onto the swing, showing her how to grip the chains. "Now I'm going to push you and you'll fly, okay?" Lily nodded, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Jackson began pushing her gently, gradually increasing the height. Her laughter, loud, free, unguarded, was like music. Soon he was laughing too, a sound he barely recognized as his own. When was the last time he'd laughed like that? He couldn't remember. He pushed the swing higher and Lily's laughter turned to shrieks of joy. She was completely in the moment, trusting him to keep her safe. After the swing came the slide, the seesaw, the spinning merry-go-round. Jackson, who once found noisy kids and crowded parks annoying, found himself laughing out loud, chasing after her, enjoying every second. It was during one clumsy chase between the play structures that it happened. Lily, looking behind her to see if he was following, didn't notice the small bump in the path. She tripped and fell, scraping her knee on the gravel. Jackson rushed to her, heart pounding. He picked her up from the ground, checking the knee that was already showing a red mark and some scratches. "Lily, are you okay? Does it hurt a lot?" She blinked a few times, looking at the scrape. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. "It hurt a little. But you're here, so it's okay." Something cracked inside Jackson, the absolute trust in her eyes, the certainty that because he was there, everything would be fine. It was a bigger responsibility than anything he'd ever felt. And at the same time, more rewarding than any professional achievement. "Yes, I'm here," he said, voice thick with emotion. "And I always will be." It was a promise he hadn't planned to make, but it came naturally. And as he spoke, he realized he meant it. He cleaned the scrape with wet wipes he had in his pocket. Thankfully, Vanessa had insisted. "Kids get dirty, boss, trust me." Then he bought Lily an ice cream and they sat on a bench watching the ducks on the pond. "Thanks for the best day ever, Jack," she said, ice cream dripping down her chin. He smiled, wiping her face with a napkin. "You're welcome, kiddo." Kiddo. The nickname came out spontaneously and it stuck. As they headed home, Lily walked with a slight limp she tried to hide. Jackson made another decision. He needed to find out what happened to Claire. The following Monday, after leaving Lily, at home with the nanny, Jackson called Vanessa into his office. "I need you to hire someone," he said, closing the door, discreetly. "What kind of professional, Mr. Cole?" Jackson hesitated only a moment. "A private investigator, the best you can find." Vanessa showed no surprise. "May I ask what the focus of the investigation will be?" "My sister, Claire Cole, missing for 5 years. I recently found out she has a daughter, the little girl who's with me. I need to know what happened." She nodded, taking quick notes. "Any specific details that might help the search?" Jackson opened a drawer and took out a copy of the photo Lily always carried. "I have reason to believe this photo is recent, maybe 2 years old at most. And from what the girl told me, they were living in precarious conditions, moving frequently. That means your sister is or was alive not long ago." "Exactly. And I want to know why she disappeared just days before Lily ended up on the streets." Vanessa studied the photo for a moment. "Understood. I'll hire someone right away." A week later, the investigator presented his first report. Claire had indeed lived in at least 6 different addresses over the past 3 years. Always small apartments or rented rooms in modest neighborhoods. She used her real name in some places, false names in others. She worked temporary jobs, never staying more than a few months anywhere. Everything indicated she was running from something or someone. The last known address was a rented room in an elderly woman's house about 10 blocks from where Jackson found Lily. The landlady confirmed Claire had left one night, leaving the child behind, promising to return in a few hours. When she didn't come back, the woman had taken Lily to a children's shelter. "And what about my sister?" Jackson asked, feeling his heart clench. The investigator shook his head. "We still don't know. There's no record of a death, hospitalization, or arrest under her name. She simply vanished." "Do you think she abandoned her daughter?" "I can't say. But based on neighbors and the landlady's accounts, she was extremely devoted to the girl. Something must have happened." Jackson thanked him for the report and asked him to continue the investigation. Driving home that night, a new sense of hope accompanied him. There was no proof Claire was dead. She might be out there, needing help, just like Lily had. When he arrived, he found Lily in the living room, focused on a new puzzle. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. "Look, Jack, I did all the edges already," he smiled, admiring her progress. "That's amazing, kiddo. You're really smart." He sat down next to her and began searching for pieces. As they worked in comfortable silence, Jackson reflected on the journey they had undertaken these past weeks. In the beginning, they were 2 strangers thrown together by impossible circumstances. Now there was something more, a bond growing day by day, strengthened by morning drawings, puzzle nights, weekend outings in the park. As he watched Lily's small fingers fit the pieces with surprising precision, Jackson felt a certainty solidify in his heart. He would do anything to keep this girl safe. And he would find Claire no matter what it took, because now he had something he'd lost a long time ago. A family. And as the hope of finding Claire revived, Jackson understood more and more the value of what he had already found. Trust. The trust of that child sitting next to him, who had learned to believe in him just as he was learning to believe in her. That, he realized, was the greatest treasure of all. Room 307 at St. Mercy Hospital looked like any other. Faded beige walls, thin curtains barely blocking the light, a wall clock ticking too loudly in the night silence. The woman lying in the bed watched the shadows dancing on the ceiling, unable to sleep. "How are you feeling today, Anne?" Nurse Kim entered, carrying a tray of medications. She was always kind, with a smile that seemed genuine. The woman everyone called Anne liked her. "The same," she answered simply. That was the truth. 3 months in the hospital and everything was still the same. The doctors said she had been found unconscious in the street, hit by a driver who fled the scene. No documents, no ID, no one looking for her. Worst of all, no memory. Dr. Phillips will be by later. He said he has good news about your physical therapy. Anne nodded without enthusiasm. Her body was healing well. The leg that had been broken in 2 places could now bear her weight. The deep cut on her forehead had become a thin scar, almost invisible beneath the bangs that had grown out. Her ribs no longer hurt when she breathed deeply. It was her mind. That remained broken, a vast emptiness where an entire life should have been. "Anne isn't even my real name," she said quietly, more to herself than to the nurse. Kim paused, looking at her with compassion. "It's just temporary. Until we figure out who you are." But both knew that chances faded with each passing day. No photo on the missing persons posters, no match in the police database, no one searching for a woman of about 30 with brown hair and light eyes. To the outside world, she simply didn't exist. The only thing she had were the nightmares. Always the same, crossing a dark street looking over her shoulder as if someone were following. Then headlights appearing out of nowhere, blinding her, the sound of tires screeching on asphalt. And the scream, her own scream before everything went black. Dr. Phillips said it was a fragmented memory of the accident, but Anne knew there was more to it, because in the dream, before the headlights, she was always holding something, a piece of paper, an address, and she felt a sense of urgency, as though she was finally heading to meet someone important. Then, in the most intense dreams, came the worst part, a child's voice calling for her, shouting a word she couldn't understand. A voice that made her heart ache so much she woke up in tears, not knowing why. "I brought you something," Kim said, pulling her from those dark thoughts. From her uniform pocket, she took out a small blue notebook and some colored pens. "I thought it might help. You know, to write down anything that comes to mind or draw." Anne took the notebook, running her fingertips over the smooth cover. "Thank you," she said, genuinely grateful for the kindness. After the nurse left, Anne opened to a blank page. She stared at the empty paper, so much like the emptiness in her mind. Then, without thinking too much, she began to draw. Her hand moved almost of its own accord. Lines turned into shapes. Shapes formed a face, a small face with round cheeks and big eyes. A little girl. Anne gazed at the drawing, her heart racing. Who was this child? Why did her fingers know how to sketch this specific face when her mind recognized nothing? She quickly turned the page, unnerved by the intensity of her feelings. On the new page, she wrote a few words that often swirled in her mind, without knowing if they meant anything. "Jack, promise, hide, photo, cardboard, run." The last word made her tremble. Run. Was she running from someone? Or something? The afternoon passed slowly. Dr. Phillips visited, confirming she could start walking without crutches in about a week, and promised another session with the psychologist who specialized in trauma and memory loss. "I still hope. Your memory returns spontaneously," he said, as he always did. "Post-traumatic amnesia often resolves with time." But his eyes said otherwise. Anne had been in the hospital longer than normal. Soon bureaucratic issues would arise. Who would pay for her treatment? Where would she go afterward? How would she live without identity, without a past, without anything? That night, the nightmare was different. It began the usual way, the dark street, the headlights, the impact. But then, instead of the usual darkness, she saw herself in a small room, sitting on a narrow bed. In her arms, the little girl from the drawing slept peacefully. In the dream, Anne felt an immense love for that child, so big it barely fit in her chest. She also felt fear, a constant, corrosive fear that made her check the window repeatedly, making sure it was locked. The scene changed. Now she was standing, looking at the same girl but awake. She was holding the child's small face in her hands. "You must always keep this with you. It's very important. If anything happens, show it to someone who can help." In the dream, Anne handed the child something, a photo. She woke up with a start, heart pounding in her chest, the words echoing in her mind. It wasn't just a dream, it was a memory. She was sure of it. "I have a daughter," she whispered to the empty room. The revelation hit her like an avalanche. A daughter, a small child who depended on her, a child who might be alone somewhere, wondering why her mother never returned. "Oh, my God!" Anne covered her mouth, feeling sick. "I abandoned her. No, it wasn't intentional. She was going to come back. The accident happened, and now she didn't even know her daughter's name, nor where to find her." Panic gripped her, suffocating. She threw off the blankets and tried to stand up, even though she knew she had nowhere to go. Where would she search? How would she find a child whose face she only knew from dreams and drawings? The door opened, and the night nurse rushed in. Alerted by changes in the monitors, "Anne, are you okay?" "My daughter," she managed between short, painful breaths. "I have a daughter." The nurse helped her lie down again, trying to calm her. "I'll call the doctor, all right? Breathe deeply." When she was alone again, Anne grabbed the notebook from the bedside table and turned to the drawing she'd made. She stared at the girl's face as though sheer willpower could make her remember the child's name. "Who are you?" she whispered to the drawing. "Where are you now?" As silent tears rolled down her cheeks, another fragment bubbled up through the fog in her mind, an address, incomplete but real. A place she had been heading to that night. Anne picked up a pen and wrote in the corner of the page, 82 Park Avenue. That was all. No apartment number, no other details. But it was a start. That night, as the mild sedative took effect and finally allowed her to sleep, Anne made a silent promise to the nameless girl in her dreams. She would remember. She would find her way back. Somehow she would find her daughter, and maybe in finding her she would also find herself. On the edge of consciousness and dream, another word drifted to her like a distant whisper. Lily. She tried to cling to it, repeat it, but sleep was too strong. Thus the nameless woman went on dreaming of the little girl who might still be waiting for her somewhere. 2 months had passed since Lily entered Jackson's life. The penthouse, once more like a model home than an actual place to live, was now alive. Colorful drawings on the fridge, toys neatly stored in boxes around the living room, a tiny pair of sneakers alongside his expensive Italian shoes at the entrance. Subtle changes that meant everything. Fall had arrived, bringing colder winds and golden leaves Lily loved to collect during their park walks. Jackson had made it a routine on Sundays. They woke up early, had breakfast at a nearby bakery, then spent hours in the park, regardless of the weather. "Jack, look at this one," Lily yelled, running toward him with a perfect red leaf. "It's the biggest one ever," Jackson smiled, kneeling to examine her treasure. "Wow, that's really special. Let's keep it in your book, okay?" Lily nodded, placing the leaf carefully into a small bag she carried for her collection. She had changed so much in the past weeks. Her eyes no longer held that constant fear. Her laughter came more easily. And most notably, she slept through the night without nightmares. In the first week, Jackson rushed to her room at least twice every night, awakened by her terrified screams. Now the nights were peaceful. As Mrs. Martinez, the nanny who looked after Lily while he worked, would say, "That girl finally feels safe." Safety. It was something Jackson had never valued before. He'd always lived for risks, for achievements, for the next challenge. Now, creating a secure environment for Lily had become his priority. When they returned home that Sunday afternoon, they found Mrs. Martinez in the kitchen preparing a roast. "Perfect timing," she smiled. It'll be ready in 10 minutes. Thank you for doing this on your day off, Jackson said. Das. Older woman shrugged. I like cooking for you all. Besides, this little one needs real food, not just the takeout you always order. Jackson couldn't argue. Before Lily, he barely used the kitchen. Now, thanks to Mrs. Martinez, there were home-cooked meals almost every day, and Lily, who used to eat little and slowly as if to make the food last, now had a healthy appetite. After mind-eater dinner, they headed to the living room. It was time for their favorite nighttime routine, Jackson reading stories while Lily listened, snuggled in his lap. Which one tonight, kiddo? Lily pulled a new book from the shelf. Jackson had begun, bringing a different book every couple of days, quickly amassing an impressive children's library. This one, she said, pointing to the colorful cover of a story about a girl who had a star for a friend. They settled on the large couch. Lily curled up against him like a kitten, her hair smelling of strawberry shampoo. Jackson began reading, changing his voice for each character, just the way she liked. As he read, his mind drifted to how much his life had changed. The long hours at the office, the business dinners that stretched into the wee hours, the sudden trips, those belonged to the past. Now he came home by 6. No exceptions. During meetings, he kept his phone close, in case Mrs. Martinez needed him. Even Vanessa, his assistant, had noted the change. I've never seen you decline a 9 p.m. video conference before, she said one morning. That little girl is working miracles, and it was true. Lily had transformed not just his apartment, but his priorities, his values, his own identity. The investigator kept looking for Claire, but leads were few. Jackson was beginning to accept he might never find out what really happened to his sister. Yet he was determined to honor her memory by caring for Lily as if she were his own daughter. And so the star shone brighter than ever, lighting the way home. Jackson read the final line, closing the book. Lily stayed quiet, thoughtful. Do you think stars can help us find people? She asked suddenly. The question made Jackson's heart tighten. Which people, kiddo? Like Mama. Jackson placed the book aside and adjusted Lily in his lap to look into her eyes. We're doing everything we can to find her. Remember I told you about that special man who's looking for her? Lily nodded. But what if he doesn't find her? It was the first time in weeks she'd directly brought up her mother. Jackson chose his words carefully. Then, we'll keep being a family, you and me, and we'll keep loving your mom even if we don't know where she is. Lily mulled this over, her small fingers fiddling with the button on his shirt. Then all of a sudden she leaned forward, wrapping her arms around his neck in a tight hug. I love you, Jack, she whispered, her words muffled against his shoulder. It was the first time she'd said it. Jackson felt his eyes sting. I love you too, kiddo, he replied, his voice husky. So much. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in the comfortable silence of the night. When Lily finally pulled away, there was a new serenity in her eyes, as though she'd made an important decision. Mama told me something, she said softly, as if sharing a secret. She said that if something happened, I should hold on, tight to the photo. Because the man in it had kind eyes. Jackson froze, the man in the photo, himself standing next to Claire at the last Christmas they'd spent together before their big fight. She said that about me? He managed to ask, barely able to form words. Lily nodded solemnly. She looked at the photo a lot. Sometimes, she cried, she said one day she'd see you again. The words hit Jackson like lightning. Claire had kept his photo all those years. She'd told Lily about him. She'd been planning to seek him out. In that instant, the invisible bridges connecting past and present, loss and reunion, despair and hope, seemed to materialize before his eyes. Claire had sent Lily to him. Not intentionally, perhaps, but the universe had completed the plan she hadn't been able to finish. Thank you for telling me, Jackson said, kissing the top of Lily's head. That's the most important gift you could give me. That night, as he put Lily to bed, Jackson made a silent promise to his absent sister. He would find Claire, no matter how long it took. And until then, he would care for her daughter like the precious treasure she was, because now he too had kind eyes, eyes that finally saw what really mattered. Room 307 at St. Mercy Hospital was quiet, except for the steady beeping of medical equipment. Anne, still called that by everyone, sat on the bed, scribbling in her blue notebook. In recent weeks, it had become her anchor, the one place where she could try to organize the confused fragments surfacing in her mind. The pages were full of drawings, the girl's face now more detailed. A house she didn't recognize but could sketch with precision, and more recently a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, intense eyes. Always the same man. Dr. Winters, her psychologist, took particular interest in these drawings. "Do you have any idea who he might be?" she asked during that morning's session. Anne shook her head. "I feel like I should know, but..." She hesitated. "Sometimes I wake up with a name on the tip of my tongue. Jack. That's it." "Jack," the doctor repeated, making notes. "And how do you feel when you think of that name?" It was hard to explain. A whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "Fear," she said finally. "Not of him. More like fear of facing him, like I did something terrible." She paused, frowning. "But I also feel longing, a deep, painful longing." The night before, she'd had a clearer dream. She was in a bright living room decorated for Christmas. The man from her drawings was there, younger, laughing. She called him brother. They toasted, took photos. Then the scene changed. Yelling accusations, harsh words, she stormed out, vowing never to return. "I think he's my brother," she told the psychologist. "And we had a big fight." Dr. Winters nodded, encouraging. "That's a big breakthrough, Anne. Your memory is coming back bit by bit." But it wasn't enough. She still didn't know her real name. She didn't know where to find her daughter, because now she was absolutely sure the girl in her drawings was her child. And if the man truly was her brother, why did she feel both afraid of him and desperate to see him? "There is something called emotional blocking," the doctor explained. "Sometimes when a memory is too painful, our brain blocks it out, even if we begin to recover other memories." Anne thought of the feelings that hounded her. Constant vigilance, looking over her shoulder, fear of being found. She had been running from someone. Perhaps that was why, even before the accident, she'd been hiding some memories from herself. That afternoon, after physical therapy, Anne sat by her window, watching people come and go on the street below. Her body was almost fully recovered. Soon she would be discharged. And then? Where would a woman with no name, no documents, no past go? More importantly, how would she find her daughter? She closed her eyes, trying to force the memory. She had to remember, she had to... That's when the word popped up, clear as day, Cole. Her eyes flew open, her heart racing. Cole. A last name? Her last name? Or maybe his, her brother's. She grabbed the notebook and wrote, Jack Cole. She stared at the name, feeling a strange familiarity. Yes, that was it. Jack Cole was her brother, and her own name must also be Cole. Claire, she whispered into the empty room. Claire Cole. The name fit perfectly, like a puzzle piece snapping into place in her fragmented mind. Claire. She was Claire. She turned on the small TV in the room, flipping through channels frantically. She was looking for any news about a missing woman named Claire Cole, or about a businessman named Jackson Cole, because somehow she knew Jack was short for Jackson. She found nothing. She shut the TV off, frustrated but also oddly relieved. If there was no news, maybe no one was looking for her. Maybe that was safer. That night, after the nurses made their rounds, Claire, no longer Anne in her own mind, opened the last page of her notebook and began to write a letter. Jack, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm not even sure I'll ever find you again. But writing helps organize the thoughts that are finally coming back. I remember our last meeting, the terrible things we said to each other. You were right about a lot of them. I was ruining my life. I got mixed up with dangerous people. I was lost. What you didn't know, what I didn't tell you, was that I was already pregnant that night, and it was for her, for Lily, that I finally found the strength to change. But the past doesn't let go of us easily, does it? The people I knew, the debts I racked up, the mistakes I made, they all chased me. For years I lived on the run with my daughter, changing cities, changing names, always looking over my shoulder. I thought many times about coming to you. I even drove near your building once, but I couldn't bring myself to go up. How could I ask for forgiveness after so long? How could I show up with a niece you never knew existed? Now, after the accident, I don't even know where Lily is. I feel like I've failed as a mother, as a sister, as a person, I'm so scared, Jack. If you're reading this, if you've somehow found me, please help me find my daughter, your sister, even if you don't see me that way anymore. Claire. She folded the paper and tucked it under her pillow. There was no way to send it, of course, but writing it made her feel closer to her brother and in some way closer to herself. Across town, Jackson Cole parked in front of a small, simple building. It was the 5th homeless shelter he'd visited that week. "Mr. Cole, I'm Martha Gomez, director of the Hope Center." A middle-aged woman greeted him at the entrance, extending her hand. Jackson noticed calluses on her fingers, hands that were used to hard work. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. "As I mentioned on the phone, I'm looking for any information about my sister, Claire." Martha led him down a narrow corridor to a small office. "We don't have many formal records," she explained, "but I was intrigued when you mentioned her name. We did have a Claire here for a few weeks. About 6 months ago, she had a little daughter." Jackson's heart pounded. "That would be her. Claire Cole, right?" Martha nodded. "She didn't use a last name here, but yes, the description you gave matches. Brown hair, light eyes, around 30, and the daughter, Lily, I believe, was 4. The shelter's plain walls seemed to spin around Jackson. It was real. Claire had been alive just a few miles away, only months earlier. "Do you know where she went after this?" Martha shook her head. "Unfortunately, no. One day they just didn't come back. It happens a lot around here. People come and go." She paused, recalling something. "Wait, Claire left a few things behind. Nothing valuable, but we kept them for a few months in case she returned." Martha stood and walked to a storage cabinet in the corner of the office. After some rummaging, she pulled out a small cardboard box. "Here, it's not much, but maybe it'll help." Jackson opened the box carefully. Inside were some personal items: a scarf, a small pocket mirror, some photographs, including a copy of the one Lily carried, a well-worn address book, and underneath it all an envelope. "May I?" Jackson asked, indicating the envelope. "Of course. They're her belongings, but if you really are her brother..." Jackson opened the envelope. Inside was a letter that had never been sent. His name was written at the top, in handwriting he'd recognize anywhere. "Jack, I've tried writing this letter so many times I've lost count. The words never seem right. How do I explain 5 years of silence? How do I ask forgiveness for the things I said, for disappearing like that? I have no excuses. You were right about many things that night. I was destroying my life. But what you didn't know, what I barely knew myself at the time, was that I was pregnant. Lily was born 8 months after our fight. She's perfect, Jack. Smart, strong, kind. She's the best thing I've ever done. Because of her, I managed to quit drugs and leave the people who pulled me down. But the problems I created before she was born didn't go away. The debts, the dangerous people I got involved with, they followed us. That's why we moved from city to city, why I used fake names. I'm tired of running, Jack, of looking over my shoulder, of denying Lily a stable home. I've been thinking of you a lot lately. Lily has your look, you know, that stubborn determination. I show her the photo we took our last Christmas together. I tell her stories about Uncle Jack, the smartest and bravest man I know. Tomorrow I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to look for you. I have your address. I'm terrified, to be honest. Afraid you hate me, afraid you'll see only my mistakes, that you won't give me a chance to show I've changed, but I have to try. For Lily. For me. For us. If there's still room in your heart for your problematic sister, please open the door when I knock. With love and hope, Claire. The date at the top of the letter was 2 days before Jackson found Lily on the street. He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his face. Claire had been on her way to see him. After 5 years, she was finally coming back, and something happened on the way. "Mr. Cole, are you all right?" Martha's concerned voice brought him back. She was coming to see me," he choked out. On the day she disappeared, the shelter director placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I'm so sorry. Jackson took a deep breath, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I have to find her. She might be... He couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't want to think the worst. Not now when he held this letter, this proof that Claire had wanted to return to his life, that she had changed, that she loved him despite everything. Have you tried hospitals? Martha asked. If something happened on the way... Jackson nodded. My investigator checked all admissions under her name but found nothing. What about unidentified patients? Sadly, it's common for homeless people to be admitted with no ID. He hadn't considered that. How do I... Check? I can help, Martha offered. We partner with several hospitals in the area. Let me make some calls. For the next hour, Martha made a series of phone calls describing Claire with all the details Jackson could provide. Most hospitals had no useful information. A few promised to look into it and call back. Then, on the second-to-last call, they got their first real lead. Dr. Phillips? This is Martha from the Hope Center. Yes, I'm well, thank you. I'm calling about a special case. We're looking for a woman around 30, brown hair, light eyes, possibly admitted without identification. In the last 2 or 3 months, Jackson watched anxiously as Martha's expression changed. Really? How long has she been there? Post-traumatic amnesia? I understand, yes, I have someone here who might be a relative. Could we come by today? Excellent. Thank you so much. She hung up the phone, turning to Jackson with shining eyes. Sir, Mercy Hospital. They've had an unidentified patient there for more than 3 months. A woman in her early 30s found after a hit and run. She has amnesia. Jackson felt the air leave the room. It could be her, he whispered. The doctor said we can go right now. She'll meet us in person. Jackson picked up the box of Claire's belongings, carefully placing the letter in the inside pocket of his jacket. For the first time in weeks, he felt he could breathe again. There was a chance to fix the past, a chance to reunite his sister with her daughter, a chance to have a whole family again. Let's go, he said, voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Let's find her. As he drove toward St. Mercy Hospital, Claire's words from the shelter letter echoed in his mind. If there's still room in your heart for your problematic sister, please open the door when I knock. He wouldn't just open the door, he would find her, bring her home, show her there had always been room in his heart. More than she could ever imagine, St. Mercy Hospital had that unmistakable smell Jackson had always disliked, disinfectant mixed with something indefinable that screamed illness. He followed Dr. Phillips down the white corridor, trying to contain the anxiety that made his heart pound. I should warn you, Mr. Cole, the doctor said as they walked, that even if it's your sister, she may not recognize you right away. Post-traumatic amnesia can be unpredictable. Jackson only nodded, gripping the handle of the briefcase containing a copy of the photo Lily carried and other documents that might prove Claire's identity. The letter in his jacket pocket felt like it was burning against his chest. Does she remember anything? He asked, voice more gravelly than he intended. Fragments, dreams. In recent weeks, she's been drawing a child's face and mentioning a name, Jack. That's when I began suspecting this might be emotional blocking, rather than just physical trauma. They stopped outside room 307. Dr. Phillips turned to him with a serious expression. I'll go in first, prepare her. Wait here until I call you, okay? Jackson wanted to protest. He wanted to burst through the door, embrace Claire, tell her everything was going to be fine. But he merely agreed, leaning against the hallway wall while the doctor went in. 5 minutes that felt like an eternity. Finally, the door opened again. You can come in now, Mr. Cole. Heart in his throat, Jackson stepped forward. Then, after 15 years of emotional distance, 5 years believing she was dead, and 3 months of frantic searching, he saw his sister. Claire was sitting on the bed, wearing a simple hospital gown. She looked thinner than he remembered, her face a bit more angular, with small lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Her brown hair was shorter, brushing her shoulders, but those eyes, Cole eyes, that same blue-gray as his, were unmistakable. She stared at him, confused. There was no immediate recognition in her gaze, just curiosity and maybe a hint of fear. Claire, was all he could say, his voice barely working. Something happened then, subtle but noticeable. A tremor seemed to run through her body. Her eyes widened slightly and her breathing quickened. "You know me," she said. It wasn't a question. Jackson took another step, still keeping a cautious distance so as not to scare her. "Yes, I'm Jackson. Jack, your brother." Claire brought her hand to her mouth, her eyes suddenly filling with tears she didn't understand. Her body recognized something her mind hadn't yet grasped. She was standing before someone important, someone who was part of her. "I can't remember," she said, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "Why am I crying? Why does it hurt so much to see you?" Jackson felt his own eyes burning. He moved closer, still tentative. "May I?" he asked, indicating the edge of the bed. She nodded, wiping away tears with the backs of her hands. "Dr. Phillips says you might be my brother, that you have proof." "I do," he replied, opening the briefcase and pulling out the photo Lily carried. The same picture found among Claire's belongings at the shelter, the two of them at Christmas just before the family broke apart. Claire took the photo gently, as if it was something precious and fragile. Her fingers brushed over his face, then her own in the picture almost reverently. "That's me," she murmured, not as a question but a statement. Her mind recognized the moment, those people. "And you?" "Yes. Christmas 2019 at our parents' house in Connecticut." She kept staring at it, absorbing every detail. "We look, happy." "We were," Jackson confirmed. "Not always, of course. We fought like cats and dogs when we were kids." A sad smile appeared on his lips. "You were too stubborn for your own good." Claire lifted her gaze from the photo to meet his eyes. "I still am," she said, and for a moment she sounded almost like the Claire he knew. "I guess that's why I survived." The air between them was charged with emotion, unasked questions, untold stories, years of distance. Jackson wanted to hug her, tell her how much he'd missed her, how sorry he was for everything, but he had to take it slow. This Claire was, in some ways, a stranger with his sister's face. "I have something else to show you," he said gently. "Something that might help your memory." Jackson pulled out his phone, opening a recent photo of Lily, smiling as she attempted to solve a puzzle that was too advanced for her age. Claire's reaction was immediate. She gasped, raising her hands to her mouth again, eyes locked on the chew screen. "That girl," she whispered. "She's the one in my dreams." Thirstige. In the days that followed, Jackson rearranged his entire life to spend as much time as possible at the hospital. He arrived early in the morning, before breakfast, and only went home at night after Lily was already asleep under Mrs. Martinez's care. Claire didn't have a miraculous recovery of her memory. There was no sudden eureka moment. Instead, there were small steps forward, moments of clarity in the haze. Jackson brought photos, told her childhood stories, talked about their parents, who had passed away in a plane crash 5 years earlier, shortly after the siblings' fight. Sometimes Claire just listened unmoved. Other times her eyes sparkled with recognition. "There was a treehouse," she said one day, out of nowhere. "You fell and broke your arm." Jackson smiled, surprised and moved. "Yeah, I was 10. You were 7. I tried climbing from the outside instead of using the ladder to show off." "Typical," she muttered. For the first time, a small smile tugged at her lips. One particularly good morning, nearly 2 weeks after their reunion, Jackson arrived at the hospital with news. "The doctor said you can have another visitor today," he announced, trying to contain his excitement. "Someone very special wants to see you." Claire, who now spent most of her time in a chair by the window rather than in bed, looked at him curiously. "Who?" "It's a surprise," Jackson said, smiling. "I just need to know if you're ready. If it's too much, we can wait." She thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'm ready." An hour later, after a careful talk with Dr. Phillips, Jackson returned to the room holding Lily's hand. The little girl was nervous, biting her lower lip, a gesture so much like Claire's that it pained him. Jackson knelt before her in the hallway, adjusting the bow in her hair. "Remember what we talked about? Mommy's not feeling well and can't remember everything right now, so we have to help her gently, okay?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I can't jump on her or talk too loud. Exactly, kiddo. Ready to go in? When they entered the room, Claire was standing by the window. She turned at the sound of the door and froze at the sight of the child holding Jackson's hand. It was an electric moment. The air seemed to hum with a near-tangible energy. Lily stared at her mother, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Claire stared back, a raw, primal emotion taking over her face. "Lily," Claire whispered, the name coming out like a prayer. In that instant, Jackson knew it didn't matter how much of her conscious memory Claire had lost. Her heart, her body, her soul knew her daughter. Lily looked at Jackson as if asking for permission. When he gave a slight nod, she let go of his hand and walked carefully toward Claire. She stopped a few steps away, suddenly shy. "Hi, Mommy." Claire knelt, bringing herself to her daughter's level. Her hands trembled as she held them out, not daring to touch yet. "Lily," she repeated, and this time there was more recognition in her voice. "My Lily." It was the girl who closed the final gap, flinging herself into her mother's arms with a small sob. Claire hugged her tightly, burying her face in her daughter's hair, her entire body shaking with emotions that went beyond memory or reason. Jackson watched from a distance, tears running freely down his face. It was a beginning, a fragile, uncertain beginning, but real. In the following weeks brought more progress. With Lily visiting regularly, Claire's memories seemed to come back faster. The child acted like a bridge to the past, each gesture or word triggering new recollections. A month after their first meeting, Claire was discharged from the hospital. Jackson had prepared the guest bedroom in his apartment, the one not used by Lily, for her. "Just until you feel comfortable having your own space," he explained, helping her settle in. "No pressure." Claire nodded, grateful. There were still gaps in her memory. Entire periods of her life remained dark. But every day brought more clarity, more connection with who she had been. The first few days in the apartment were an adjustment for all of them. Lily swung between moments of pure joy at having her mother back and periods of confusion, when Claire didn't recall something that seemed obvious to her. "I don't like green apples, only red ones," she said one morning when Claire cut the wrong fruit for her snack. Claire looked devastated not to know something so basic about her own child. Later, Jackson found her crying on the balcony. "I'm a stranger to her," Claire murmured when he sat beside her. "And the worst part is she's not a stranger to me. I love her completely, even though I can't remember everything." "Give it time," Jackson advised. "You two are getting to know each other again. That's not necessarily a bad thing." Little moments accumulated. Claire relearning how to braid Lily's hair the way she liked it. Lily patiently showing her mother her favorite books, toys, clothes. The two drawing together, Claire surprised to discover she still drew as well as in her teens. Then, on an ordinary evening 2 months after Claire's return, she walked into Jackson's office after Lily had gone to bed. "Can we talk?" She asked, her voice serious. Jackson gestured for her to sit. "Of course. Did something happen?" Claire sat, her hands restless in her lap. "I remember everything now. Or almost everything." He straightened, suddenly alert. "Everything. The fight, why I left, the years away. Lily." She hesitated, eyes downcast. "The terrible things I did, the people I got involved with." Jackson studied her profile, noticing how she seemed older in that moment, not physically, but as though the weight of these returning memories had aged her inside. "Claire, none of that matters now." "It does," she insisted, finally meeting his eyes. "I need you to understand why I stayed away so long, why I didn't ask for help when things got bad." "Shame," Jackson said simply. "You were ashamed." Claire blinked, surprised. "How do you know?" "Your letter. The one you never sent. I found it at the shelter." She closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing this. "What else do you know?" "That you were on your way to see me the day of the accident. That you kept my photo all these years. That you told Lily about me." Claire nodded, tears silently falling. "I'm sorry, Jack, for everything, for the lost years, for not being strong enough to ask for help sooner." Jackson stood, walked around the desk and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I don't need the reasons, Claire. I just want you back." She looked at him, her identical eyes brimming with a gratitude so deep it hurt. "The day of the accident," she began, her voice trembling, "I finally worked up the courage. I spent weeks rehearsing what I would say, imagining how you'd react." Claire paused, taking a deep breath to steady herself before continuing. "I left Lily with the landlady, promising to be back in a few hours. I had your address written on a piece of paper. I was crossing the street when—" Her voice gave out. "When what?" Jackson prodded gently. "I saw a car I recognized, someone I owed money to, a dangerous person. I thought they'd found me, that they were following me." She closed her eyes, reliving it. "I panicked, started running. I didn't see the other car coming." Claire opened her eyes again, now flooded with tears. "I remember the headlights coming straight at me. I remember screaming for help, and then nothing." She took a shaky breath. "The worst part is it was probably a coincidence. The car I thought was following me. Maybe it wasn't. Even the same person. My fear blinded me." Jackson felt something inside him shatter. Knowing Claire had been so close, just blocks from his building, moments away from knocking on his door, when the accident happened. Knowing the reunion, that could have occurred months earlier, was only seconds away. "Jack?" Claire asked, worried by his silence. He hadn't realized he was crying until he felt her hand on his face, wiping away a tear. "We were so close," he murmured. "So close to finding each other that day." "I know." The pain of that realization tore him apart. So many months lost, so much suffering that could have been avoided, for Claire, for Lily, for him. But then behind the pain came another emotion: gratitude. Because despite everything, Claire had never given up. She kept his photo, told Lily about him, finally worked up the nerve to seek him out. And now he had the chance not to give up on her either. Jackson stood and pulled Claire into a tight hug, something they hadn't shared since they were teenagers. She returned it with equal intensity, her slender body trembling in his arms. "We're together now," he said into her hair. "That's all that matters." When they pulled apart, Claire wore a shaky smile. "You really are the man with kind eyes from the photo." Jackson laughed, wiping his own tears. "That's a story you'll have to tell me someday." "I'll tell you all of them," Claire promised. "We have time now." And it was true. After 15 years of separation, 5 years believing the other was lost forever, they finally had time. Time to heal, to rebuild, to be the family they were always meant to be. That night, for the first time since the accident, Claire slept, without nightmares. And Jackson, in his own room, felt a peace he hadn't known since childhood. The road ahead would still be long. Claire would need continued treatment to re-establish her legal identity, to decide what she wanted to do with her life. But none of that felt scary anymore because they weren't alone. And that, more than anything, made all the difference. Spring arrived in the city, bringing not just flowers and longer days, but also a new life for the penthouse that had once seemed merely a stopover for Jackson. 3 months had passed since Claire's discharge, and the transformation was visible in every corner. The kitchen, once immaculate and rarely used, now showed traces of flour on the counter and colorful drawings stuck to the fridge with fruit-shaped magnets. The living room, once as minimalist as a catalog page, now had children's books piled beside the couch and a box of toys strategically placed. The pristine white walls displayed bright new artwork, some purchased, some created by Lily herself, proudly signed in her clumsy handwriting. Every morning, Jackson found himself admiring these changes as he drank his coffee. The oppressive silence he'd never noticed before was replaced by all kinds of sounds. The shuffle of little slippers in the hallway, laughter coming from the next room, water running when Claire took a shower, humming some old tune, cutlery, clinking against plates during shared meals. Sounds of life. On this particularly sunny Saturday morning, he watched Claire and Lily in the kitchen, making breakfast. His sister wore a simple apron, her hair tied up in a casual bun. Lily stood on a stool beside her, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she focused all her 4-year-old determination on cracking an egg without spilling it everywhere. "Slowly, honey," Claire instructed patiently. "Tap it lightly. Then use your thumbs to pull the shell apart." Jackson smiled, leaning against the doorway. These little domestic scenes, so common for many families, were treasures for them. Each shared moment seemed to compensate a bit for the lost years. "Jack," Lily exclaimed, finally noticing him. "We're making pancakes, with strawberries and honey and bananas. Sounds delicious," he replied, stepping in to see their progress. "Can I help?" "You can cut the fruit," Claire suggested, handing him a small cutting board and a knife. "And make the coffee." Lily wanted to do something special because it's pancake day. Claire didn't need to explain. Sunday pancakes had become a sacred tradition in recent weeks. It started accidentally when Claire found an old recipe their mother used to make. Now it was a cherished ritual. Lily helped mix the batter, Claire manned the stove, and Jackson set the table and cut fruit. A simple routine that somehow healed old wounds. They moved around the kitchen naturally, a quiet ballet of people who had learned to share space. Claire now knew where every utensil was. Jackson knew exactly how she liked her coffee, strong with a touch of cinnamon. Lily knew her place was between the two adults, literally and figuratively. "Time to flip," Claire announced, and Lily leaned in, fascinated by her mother's expert pancake flip. "I want to try," she begged, reaching for the spatula. Claire hesitated, looking at Jackson, who merely shrugged, amused. "What's a kitchen without a bit of mess, right?" Claire laughed and guided Lily's hand on the spatula. "Okay, we'll try a little one." The first attempt was a disaster. The pancake stuck to the spatula and ended up half in the pan, half on the stove. But Lily's giggle was so contagious that soon they were all laughing. By the time they sat down to eat, Jackson realized how much these lazy weekend mornings meant to them all. Weekdays were more rushed. He still ran his company, though he had delegated more responsibilities so he could come home earlier. Claire had started working part-time at a local preschool, where her knack for working with children and her artistic skills were quickly appreciated. And Lily, now enrolled in a nearby pre-K, was thriving in her new, stable environment. But weekends were theirs alone. Time to reclaim what was lost, to build new memories. "What are we doing today?" Lily asked, a maple syrup mustache adorning her upper lip. Claire and Jackson exchanged a knowing look. "We think it's time you learn to ride a bike," Claire answered, smiling. "Without training wheels." Lily's eyes went wide, a mix of excitement and fear. "But I'll fall down." "Probably," Jackson agreed in his usual pragmatic tone, "but we'll be there to pick you up." He leaned over to wipe the syrup off her face with a napkin. "You're brave, Lily. Remember how you used to be afraid to sleep alone? Now you even ask us to turn off the lights." "That was when I was little," she declared, with all the seriousness of a child whose fears were just weeks behind her. Claire laughed, sharing a fond look with Jackson. "Of course, you're so grown up now." "I won't let you get hurt," Jackson added, seeing the lingering concern in his niece's eyes. "I promise I'll hold on until you get the hang of it." After breakfast, they changed into comfortable clothes. The bicycle, one Jackson had bought weeks earlier, waiting for the right moment, was brought out of storage. It was pink with purple accents, exactly as Lily had drawn in one of her pictures. At the park, Jackson adjusted the helmet on Lily's head while Claire got her phone camera ready. It was a perfect day for firsts. Clear sky, gentle breeze, families, everywhere enjoying the good weather. "Ready?" Jackson asked, holding the bike by the seat and handlebars. Lily nodded, determined despite the obvious fear. She placed her feet on the pedals, her small hands gripping the handlebars tightly. "Remember what we talked about," Jackson instructed calmly. "Look ahead, not down. Keep pedaling steadily. If you start leaning, turn the handlebar slightly, in that direction." Claire watched from a short distance, snapping pictures. Her heart overflowed with a joy she could barely contain. Seeing Jackson and Lily together, so patient and caring, was a gift she never imagined she'd have. The difference from those dark days, of constantly running, of fear, debts, and dangerous people, felt almost surreal. The first tries went as expected. Lily could barely move a few yards before wobbling dangerously. Jackson jogged alongside, holding her steady, encouraging her to keep going. "You're doing great," he said. "Don't stop pedaling." After half an hour of attempts, one minor fall caused more fright than harm. Lily sat on the grass, her lower lip trembling. "It's too hard," she complained, eyes shiny with unshed tears. "I'll never get it." Jackson knelt in front of her, pushing a stray hair back under her helmet. "You know why it's hard." She shook her head. Because it's worth it, he explained simply. The best things in life are usually hard at first, but when you finally do it, it's the best feeling in the world. He glanced briefly at Claire, who had come over and was now watching with a gentle smile. Like finding people we love after thinking we'd lost them forever. His words seemed to resonate with Lily and Claire alike. Claire knelt beside them, placing a hand on her brother's shoulder. He's right, honey, she added. You're stronger than you think. Look at everything you've already overcome. Lily looked from one to the other, absorbing their encouragement. Determination replaced the defeat on her face. Can I try again? Jackson felt immense pride at her question. Of course you can, kiddo. As many times as you want. This time something clicked. Maybe it was confidence or her body finally finding its natural balance, but Lily managed to pedal a longer distance. Jackson ran alongside, still holding the bike, sensing she needed less support with each yard. Then, without warning, he let go. It was almost instinctual. He realized she was steady, momentum keeping her upright, and his fingers just slipped off the seat. For a few magical seconds, Lily was riding on her own, completely unaware Jackson wasn't. Holding on, when she finally noticed, the shock almost caused her to fall, but she managed to maintain her balance for a few more yards before stopping. Jack! Mommy! I did it! She shouted, her face lit by a smile brighter than the sun. The celebration was immediate. Claire ran over, hugging her and covering her face in kisses. Jackson arrived seconds later, lifting her into the air in a hug that made her squeal with delight. I knew you could, he said, pride evident in his voice. You're amazing, kiddo. The rest of the afternoon passed in a series of increasingly confident rides. Lily fell a few more times, but she got up immediately, determined to master her new skill. By the time they headed home, tired and happy, she was chattering non-stop about how she'd soon be able to ride her bike to school. Let's take it slow, Claire laughed, sharing a knowing look with Jackson. One step at a time, okay? Or, one pedal at a time, Jackson added, ruffling Lily's hair. After a simple dinner, the three of them settled in the living room. It was time for another weekend ritual, sifting through old photos and memorabilia Jackson had stored in his closet. For years, what are we looking at today? Lily asked, nestling between them on the plush rug. Jackson pulled out a box they hadn't opened yet. I think these are albums from when we were kids, he said, opening it, from our parents' house in Connecticut. The first time they'd opened one of these boxes weeks ago had been tense. Claire was still recovering, her memories returning in fragments. There was a fear the photos might trigger painful memories or, worse, no memories at all. But instead, they'd become a powerful tool in her healing, each image helping fill the blanks, reconnect Claire with her past. She picked up one of the albums, opening it carefully. Her memory was nearly complete now, but there were still moments that felt like they belonged to another person, another life. Look at this, she said, turning the album so he could see a photo of two smiling teenagers sitting on a pier, their feet dangling over the water. Lake Windermere, summer 2005. You must have been, what, 13? Jackson nodded, taking a closer look. And you were 10. That was when you fell in trying to catch a frog, remember? Claire laughed, the sound light and genuine. And you jumped in to save me, even though I could swim perfectly fine. Big brother instinct, Jackson said with a shrug, smiling. I couldn't turn it off. Still can't, Claire observed softly. Only now you're saving both of us. The comment hung in the air, laden with unspoken gratitude. Jackson cleared his throat, turning the album page to hide the emotion, threatening to overwhelm him. Lily watched, fascinated, as they flipped through the album, pointing out photos and telling stories. Jackson and Claire at school dances, family Christmases, beach vacations. A normal life that now felt so far away. Suddenly, Lily pointed at a picture. Two young children seated in front of a huge Christmas tree, wearing matching pajamas. Is that you, Jack? And is that Mommy? She asked, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Claire and Jackson exchanged a meaningful look. It was a moment they'd been postponing, mostly because Lily seemed so content as things were. But they knew they'd have to clarify their family ties eventually. Jackson closed the album and set it aside. He sat facing Lily, gently taking her small hands in his. "Yes, kiddo. That's me and your mom when we were little," he began, speaking slowly. "And there's something else you need to know, Lily. I'm your uncle." Lily was silent as she processed the information. Her eyes darted from Jackson to Claire and back again, like she was connecting puzzle pieces. "Uncle?" she repeated, testing the word. "Like in that story you read me about the 3 little pigs, where the older pig was the uncle of the others?" Jackson smiled at the comparison. "Something like that. Your mom is my younger sister. That makes me your uncle." "Which means we're a real family," Claire added softly. "Not just people who live together." Lily stayed thoughtful for a few more moments. Then suddenly, a bright grin lit her face. "So you're my real uncle? I thought you were just my Jack." The simplicity of her response made the adults laugh, releasing the tension they'd built anticipating this conversation. "I'm your real uncle," Jackson confirmed. "But I'm still your Jack too. I can be both, right?" Lily answered with a tight hug, her small arms hardly reaching around his shoulders. "I like having an uncle," she declared, still hugging him. "Now I have a big family for real." Claire watched the scene, too moved to speak. For years she had dragged Lily from place to place, always running, always afraid. Lily had never known stability, safety, or the feeling of belonging to something bigger than just mother and daughter against the world. Now for the first time, Claire felt Lily had roots, and Jackson, who had lived only for work for so long, now had a new role, one that clearly made him happier than any professional success ever could. Spring gave way to summer, and summer gave way to autumn. The seasons passed with a natural ease that once seemed impossible for a family built on so much suffering and separation. Their days took on a comfortable rhythm. Lily, now 5, attended pre-K full-time. At first, the separation was hard. She clung to the adults at the classroom door, afraid they wouldn't come back. But with patience and consistency, her confidence grew. Within a few weeks, she was running inside, barely pausing to say goodbye. "See you later," she'd shout, her dinosaur print backpack bouncing as she dashed off to meet her friends. Claire, now officially Claire Cole again after a long process of retrieving her documents, had been promoted to project coordinator at the preschool where she worked. Her community reading project, which combined books and art, was a huge success, drawing attention from other schools in the area. "It's like I've discovered something that was always inside me," she told Jackson one night, after Lily had gone to bed. "Something that survived everything." Jackson understood exactly what she meant. He himself had rediscovered parts of himself he thought he'd lost. The ability to laugh openly, patience, joy in small things. He still ran his company, of course, but with a new perspective. Late-night meetings were replaced by family dinners. Business trips, when unavoidable, were shorter. And for the first time in his adult life, he took a real vacation. 2 whole weeks at the beach, building sandcastles with Lily and talking with Claire under a starry sky. The penthouse, once so sterile, now felt too small to contain all that love. Jackson had purchased a house on the outskirts of the city, spacious, with a yard for Lily to run around in, and for Claire to plant flowers. They planned to move in the following month. "Do you think she'll adjust well?" Claire asked Jackson, worried about how Lily would feel leaving the only stable home she'd known. "She'll love it," Jackson replied confidently. "Remember how excited she was about her new bedroom and the swing set in the yard? Plus," he added, "the 3 of us will still be together. That's what matters to her." On a quiet Sunday afternoon, the 3 of them were in the garden of the new house, taking advantage of the good weather before the official move. Claire sat in a comfortable chair, reading a book out loud, poetry, her most recent discovery. Jackson watered the new plants they'd bought the day before. Lily chased butterflies among the flower beds, her laughter echoing in the open space. "Look, Jack," she shouted, pointing at the sky. "A rainbow!" Jackson and Claire looked up. Indeed, a faint rainbow arched across the blue sky, left by a light rain earlier in the day. "It's a sign of good luck," Jackson said, setting down the watering can. "They say if you find the end of the rainbow, there's a pot of gold waiting." "Can we go look?" Lily asked, eyes shining with excitement. Claire laughed. "A rainbow is just light and water, sweetie. It doesn't have a physical end you can touch. Besides, Jackson said, pulling Lily into a hug, we've already found our treasure, haven't we? They paused for a snack on the terrace. The table was simply set with sandwiches, fresh fruit, and lemonade. As they ate, discussing plans for the new house, Lily spotted something on the living room wall, visible through the glass door. Can I see the photos? She asked, pointing. Claire nodded, and they all went inside. On the main wall in the living room hung 2 framed pictures side by side. The first, still protected by its worn plastic, was the photo of Jackson and Claire at their last Christmas, together. The same one Lily had carried around when she was on the streets, her only link to a family she barely knew. Next to it was a recent photo, the 3 of them in the park, smiling at the camera, sunlight bathing them in a golden glow. Lily in the center, Claire on the left, Jackson on the right, all connected, all belonging. Lily stared at the 2 photos for a long moment, her expression suddenly serious. Then, pointing at them, she said, "The first one is us when we were lost. The second one is us when we were found." The simple but profound observation took Claire and Jackson by surprise. They glanced at each other over Lily's head, tears shining in their eyes, a knowing smile on their lips. Because she was right, of course. Their story hadn't had an immediate happy ending. There had been pain, separation, years lost they could never get back. But they got something better than an easy happily ever after. They got a whole new beginning. A second chance built on patience, forgiveness, and love. Jackson knelt down to Lily's level. When you found that photo among your things, remember, it was like it was magic, guiding you to me, like the star in the book you read yesterday? Lily asked. The one that showed the way home? Exactly, Claire agreed, moved by the comparison. Lily touched the frame of the old photo. That's where it all started, huh? Jackson smiled, gently brushing his hand over her small face. That's where it all came back. Claire joined them, and the 3 sat on the couch, gazing at the photographs that told their story. They weren't a perfect family. There were still tough days and scars time would never fully erase, but they were whole again. And that, they had learned, was more than enough. It was everything. Guess what my teacher asked today? Lily said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. What? Claire asked. She asked what I want to be when I grow up. Lily paused dramatically. And I said I want to be happy, like now. Jackson felt his heart swell in his chest. He looked at his sister, his niece, this improbable family they had built from the wreckage of so many tragedies and separations. The road had been long and painful. There were moments when it seemed impossible for them to reach this point, but they had, and most important, they now knew the way back home. End with hope, truth, and love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.